essentially small businesses, 18% of them less than 20 million, mid-sized companies, 20 to 50 million, and then enterprise, more than $50 million. And so they did this survey of 649 government contract companies to fill it out. So I want to share with you my big takeaways and how you can implement this in your business so you can leverage, grow, and scale. Sounds good? So I want to jump right into the small business portion here on page 13, because I think this is where most of us are. So here it talks about challenges still remain for small businesses under the $20 million revenue, which I suspect is the majority of us that are listening today on the call. So it talks about that the small business under $20 million in revenue, it says that we expect fewer. Let me zoom in. Hold on. There it is right here. So it says that small businesses are not anticipating as many contract awards, and their difficulty in government contracting impose some limitations on their strategic options. So again, because we're smaller, we don't have a lot of strategic options, which is why I want to help talk about some of the things that you can do. It also says they're less able to prioritize investment in AI. All right. So if I'm hearing it correctly, that means that's where we can have an advantage. All right. For those of you paying attention. On the other hand, small manufacturers are focusing on automation since they got more ground to make up versus competitors, more developed operators. Automation could be a reaction to tighten labor markets. Skip all that stuff. But the focus here was that we're not prioritizing AI, which is what the big companies are doing. And also it says here, right, that we are not positioning ourselves to benefit from the administration's small business agenda. Okay, can we read that? It says we're not positioning ourselves to benefit from the administration's small business agenda. So who do we have to blame other than ourselves? It says nearly half of all small businesses that are not taking advantage of small or disadvantaged programs that are at the center of small business policies. And only 23% of small business attribute their growth and expectations to small business priorities in government contracting. So the administration laid out an agenda for helping small businesses. We're not taking advantage of the agenda, and we're not using technology. So for me, right, when I hear that and we talk about the 4 things that you can do, right, in order to start separating yourself from the pack as a small business, the first thing I want to talk about is adopting AI quicker than the rest. So that's number 1 on my agenda, is adopting AI quicker than everyone else, right? I know that AI is a new technology, but if we're going to compete with more established firms, we've got to find where's our competitive advantage. So adopting AI quicker than everyone else, let me go through some real life examples for you. I don't know how many people were on the call with me yesterday, but yesterday's call, we went on sam.gov and we pulled down this list of contract opportunities on sam.gov, and I put it into this nice Excel sheet. And so what we did is I pulled down a list of all of the upcoming sources sought and pre-solicitations, which are essentially market research for the government. So I pulled down this list, and someone on the call asked me, Eric, how do we go through this information in an expedited manner? So what I did offline before I jumped on with you guys today is I took this particular list and I put it into ChatGPT. As you see here on the screen, I just took this Excel sheet, I put it in ChatGPT, and I asked Chat, I said, tell me where all the healthcare opportunities are and categorize them by state and the due date. ChatGPT gave me this nice little spreadsheet. I then said, exclude anything that's construction related because I'm assuming that this person does not do construction. I then went a step further and I said, only show me products that I can resell. And it went a little step further. And then I asked Chat to show me the list in a chart format. And it gave me this particular chart. So do you see how I was able to take the information from sam.gov, put that document into Chat, and start asking it questions to help me narrow it down? I think a lot of us have been using AI for just really surface level things and not to help us go through and actually deconstruct bids and also deconstruct market research information so that we can have usable data to make informed decisions. And so when we look at back at this clarity report, a lot of the large companies, they're actually using AI and tools for business development. So let's go back up in here and I'll show you really quickly. So a lot of the larger businesses are now taking and let me find it for you real quick. I thought I could search it. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay. So a lot of the, where is it at? All right, here. This sheet I was looking for. So many of the larger companies are now using AI to identify contract opportunities that give them the highest win probability, developing text for their proposals and RFIs, analyzing RFPs and RFIs for key requirements and compliance, identifying win themes and strategies for effectively previously used to bid responses, and developing their pricing for basis of estimating. So again, these are ways in which some of the larger companies are using technology to get ahead. And so this for me will be the first thing that I would tell you, all small business out here, how you can do the same thing. And I'm going to also show you some examples. I don't want to just tell you what to do. I'm going to show you some actual practical examples. So I showed you earlier here in chat how we were able to take this data from sam.gov and produce this chart that shows me a list of resellable healthcare products opportunities by state. All right. Now let me show you another example. So I took this particular solicitation, and let me make sure you guys could see me well. Yes, you can. So I took this solicitation and I put it in chat and I said, pull out the must-have requirements from the solicitation. So it pulls out these requirements. Again, I took a PDF document, put it in chat. It pulled out the proposal submission and format, the performance and payment bond. So it pulls out 1 through 8. I'm sorry, 1 through 10, 11. Okay, I'm sorry. 13 items. And then I said, what are the bonding minimums? So it pulled that information out for me. I then asked it, what are the past performance requirements? It pulled that information out for me, and it gave me how the submission should be included. So again, another thing that we as small businesses are likely not doing and finding ourselves spending a lot of time trying to manually go through some of this data and information. And I can tell you from experience because one of my students told me he's having a hard time estimating projects. And so again, I know for a fact he happens to be an older student of mine. And so because he's probably not using this type of information is why he's finding himself at a disadvantage. By the way, feel free to drop your questions inside. I will definitely be answering questions for people as well. And so I want to do that, but I want to go through some of these things first. So again, utilizing it to analyze bids and help you to be able to sort through the data so that you can make faster responses. You can look at, like you said, we'll go back here. You can actually use it to identify contract opportunities, develop your text for proposal and RFIs, and analyze some of the requirements that you need to be able to fulfill. Does that make sense? All right, good stuff. Now, I'll show you one more example using chat because, again, the first thing I said we could do is actually utilizing AI. So, and my second thing that I find that is like a lot of times is that as small businesses that we're not doing is number 2 is we're not strengthening our relationships and our networks. And I think that is super important because we recently today got invited to participate in a sole source opportunity, and that came as a result of my network. I've been afforded opportunities for grants because of my network. I've had people tell me about specific grants that were out that we can get for our businesses. I've had people tell me about specific loan products that we can get to help finance our businesses. Uh, every challenge. In fact, I'm gonna say this. If you're on the if you're in this chat, there's 27 people watching now. Put to me, type inside of the box, what is your current challenge that you're facing with growing your business? Okay, I want you to write that in there. And I'm willing to bet that every single challenge that someone lists in here can be solved by networking. So I'm willing to bet that every single challenge that you list, that you're going to list to me, all right, can be solved by through networking. I'm willing to bet that. But go ahead and list it out there for me. All right. So one of the things that I did, and I'll put this on the screen for everyone to see it. Okay. Right. So check this out. This is what I did. I'm going to make this bigger. All right. So one of the things that I did, we talk about strengthening relationships and networking. All right. So I went to chat, and again, just showing you guys different ways of using chat. I said, I'm a construction company. What are some of the organizations that, hold on, let me make this bigger. Sorry. Okay. I said, I'm a construction company. What are some of the organizations that I can join in order to expand my federal contracting business? Right? Makes sense. So it says joining organizations can significantly help increase your network, provide resources, opportunities, blah, blah, blah. So it lists all these organizations, right? And then I said specifically the ones that focus on federal contracting. So it lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It gives me 10 more. And I go, chat, if I only have money to choose 2, which should I choose? And it gave me 2 organizations. Do you see how I did that? Okay. Do you see how I've shown you 3 different examples, right, of how I was able to use AI to, one, ask it questions to help me be able to grow my network, look through RFP and be able to pull down data I need, look at market research data to be able to help me analyze the data quicker and faster. And again, all of it is at a click of the button. So I noticed that every time that I'm doing examples like this, I find that a lot of our small businesses are not doing that. And that goes back to the data that the report says. So now let's go back. And so someone said, I'll pull this back up on the screen because I think this is super, super, super important, right? And by the way, if you learn anything, let me know, because again, my interest in here is showing you not that you don't know about the tools, but how to use the tools in different ways and give you other creative ideas that hopefully you can take and build upon. And also maybe you can also share with me some other ways that you guys have been able to use some of these tools. But I want you to know that in order for us, small businesses, to gain a foothold over everyone else, number one, we're going to have to strengthen our relationships and our networking. So let's go through. If you look at my screen, right, I'm going to make this bigger for people. Hold on. Okay. So interesting. Someone said, right, the one of the challenges says past experience. Look at number 1, strengthening relationships and networking to do what? Gain certifications on schedules and past performance. So KCBB, whatever type of past performance that you need, right? You can be a part of an organization with other small businesses who have that type of past performance that they can then, you can utilize, right, to pursue contract opportunities. And so again, yes, you can use your subcontractor's past performance to be able to go after proposals. Someone says funding for projects. As I mentioned earlier, we have Tim Crow. I can tell you that in fact, I'm going to do you one solid, Tim. Right? There's an organization. I'm going to pull them up, Tim. There's several organizations actually that I know of that provide funding for small businesses. But let me do this, since that's an issue that people are having problems with, is funding. There's a couple organizations out there that provide funding for small businesses. I'm going to go ahead and share. Now, what I do need is some context about the opportunity to be able to give you direction. But the biggest organization that I reference for small businesses that need funding is this particular organization here. Okay. CDFI, Community Development Financial Institutions. So these particular, you can look for CDFIs in and around your city or state, and they provide funding for small businesses. Another organization that I can recommend is Lendistry. All right. Lendistry is actually, oh, it's not letting me pull it up, but I'll leave it here on the screen. So Lendistry is actually owned by a Black owner who actually is the one of the first Black owners to just start being able to do SBA loans. So again, that's two sources of loans. I have a plethora depending upon your unique situation, depending upon the type of project, depending upon the capital needs. I can continue to recommend other organizations and sources. So I think you guys get the gist, right? If you start to expand your relationships and your networks, you'll be able to talk about, hey, I need some past performance. Who can I talk to? I need some certifications. Who can I talk to? I need to get on this GA schedule. Who can I talk to? The number two thing we just showed you is adopt AI quicker than the rest, right? I gave you 3 examples of how we've used AI. Another thing that I've seen that I think that we're not doing is number 3, which is utilizing technology, right? Leveraging technology and innovation. So again, what does that look like? Anybody heard of Google Alerts? A lot of us are even simple tools like Google Alerts and social media, we're not leveraging that in order to be able to grow and scale our businesses. I cannot tell you, right, the number of people that I have made friends with, done business with, and made money with through the power of social media. If you have not used Google Alerts, let me show you what Google Alerts are, right? So we just talked about CDFIs, brought up Lendistry. Let's go into Google Alerts. This is Google Alerts, and this is what it looks like. So you can literally, if you are in, let's say you're in Austin, you could type in Austin grant. And Google Alert will literally, you can create alert, and it will email you every day any grants related to the city of Austin or in around Austin. You can do this with anything. You can say, again, going back to that healthcare person, healthcare grants. Someone just asked me a question, and they said the loans for SBA, will they support day ones? So again, you can type in on Google Earth startup grants or startup funding, right? And so again, going back to technology, right? These are all things that if you were to employ in your business would help you get past a lot of these hurdles. What I will say is this. For me personally, Google itself as a search engine, I rank it really low now because it's full of ads, but Google Alerts skips over the search engine piece of Google. So Google Alerts gives you specific information that you want tailored to your inbox. All right. So that's something that I would say for people that if you've never seen it or done it before, try it. Because again, it's not practical for most of us to always be searching these things. And so I like to set up alerts to search things for me. So then now I'm only monitoring the key things that it searches. And try and be very specific, Victoria, or anybody watching this. The more specific you get, right, then the less garbage that you have to go through and mine through. Now, if you find that you got too specific and you don't get a lot of data, then you may want to back out. But I would really, that's why I said Austin grants, because again, we know that there's a lot of data out here. So what I'm trying to do is basically help you mine through the data and comb through it in a way that, again, I understand we all have limited time and limited resources. So the purpose of all this stuff is to help you to be able to gain back your time and resources so that you can focus on the actual business aspect of it, right? So again, going back to, I'll put it back up on the screen, going back to different ways in which we can use AI, right? These are some of the things that we've been doing in our businesses. So leverage technology, social media. Okay, why do I say social media? Because one of my recent students, who was in my 5-day challenge, she actually was able to, she started sharing on social media that she was doing government contracting now, right? And someone saw that. They reached out to her, that they lived in the same building, and then they talked to her about some opportunities for sole source contracts that they were looking to find small businesses to be able to do that for. So many, well, not even so many. Every single person watching this video is on social media. But how many of you are using social media for the purposes of winning business? I would bet you that out of the 38 people watching, 0 of you actually try and utilize social media for the purpose of winning business. So I would say, when in terms of leveraging technology innovation, think about, right, utilizing social media as a lead magnet to generate business, and also as a way to reach out to partners, and also people that you want to do business with. Again, another example, John Bowen, which is one of my students, he was trying to do some work at the local city level with one of these large manufacturers. I forget the name. I think it was Siemens or someone to that effect. And there were some Siemens products, and he was having trouble reaching the distributors. And so what he did was he went on LinkedIn and he found the actual one of the executives. He messaged them and he said, "Hey, I'm a small business out of Miami-Dade County. I'm trying to reach some of your distributors locally. I'm not having much success. Can you point me in the right direction?" And so they were able to not only point him in the right direction, they made him a reseller of their product. And because they didn't have anybody in that local territory, he became the exclusive reseller for their products in that local territory. So if you're only consuming social media for entertainment purposes, I challenge you to reverse that and look at social media as a tool for helping to grow and expanding your business. Does that make sense? Again, some other ways that I've used social media. Let me show you something. I'll show you something that I did recently. See if I can pull it up really quickly. I didn't expect to show this to you guys, but I'll be happy to show it to you. It says, hold on, I've got to pull up my email address. So I can tell you personally, I post a lot of content on LinkedIn, but what I do is, and I'm not even really that good at this stuff, but I have personally, here's an example. So I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I was trying to reach this gentleman right here. I found him on LinkedIn. He's the Dep Chase Iserman. Can you guys see my screen? Yep. And so he's the Growth Stage Investments AF Works, co-founder, COO, Rapid Acquisition, Procurement Industry Development, United States Air Force. So I went here. I don't know why it's not showing me. Okay, so I emailed Chase here on LinkedIn, and I said, "Hey, we're hosting a small business summit here in Miami, November 14th. We'd like to see how we can get someone from AF Works to speak at our event. Let me know. We can set up a call." I gave him my email address. "Eric, thanks for reaching out. Happy to discuss. Can you provide your email?" He did. Thank you. And we set up a meeting with him to discuss. So again, for me, these are ways in which I'm using these tools to reach out to people. Also, I'm like you. I don't know everyone. And so if I don't know someone, I went ahead, I found this guy on LinkedIn. I said, okay, I want to speak to someone at this department. And I messaged him through LinkedIn. He said, happy to talk to us. And then we had a conversation. We got his email address, and now we set up a meeting. How many people can do that? Every one of you can do that. How many people are doing it? That's a different question, right? So I think a lot of times we forget about a lot of the how do I say that, the soft skills. We're only thinking about like the hard skills about, actually doing the work and not surrounding all the activities that helps us to advance. I can say that I'm really been really strong in leveraging and harnessing the power of social media to grow and expand my opportunities, because now I can talk to several nine-figure companies through social media because I have a presence. And if you don't have a presence on LinkedIn, start there. Don't start with a website, start on LinkedIn. Make your presence known on LinkedIn. Please don't start with a website, start on LinkedIn. Create your character, create your avatar. You can be anybody on LinkedIn. Don't think that you're limited to any type of opportunity. This is my son. Okay. He created his avatar on LinkedIn. All right. You could do the same thing. You see what he did. That's my son. You see his name. He called himself head of strategic partnerships at Coamana with a special focus for nuclear environmental remediation and decommissioning. All right. So now what is he doing? We start creating posts related to that particular industry. Okay. How do we create the post? We use ChatGPT. ChatGPT gives us the post. Now we take and we create posts. So now people that are searching, that are engineers, that are people that are looking for small businesses that are in this field, are now finding his name associated with nuclear remediation. Every one of you can do this. But instead, what do? We focus on websites. We don't have a website. Okay, so now we're creating content. Sodium cooled fast reactors, the role of fast reactors in sustainable energy. All right. I'm seeing how much market research goes into running, operating a marketing business day and out. I figure share a few thoughts on the process. So again, right, people that are in this space are looking him up and are finding that he does nuclear remediation. Now, has he ever done any type of nuclear environmental remediation in his life? No. But all of you can create your avatar characters. So everyone has the ability to be able to do this. But if I were to go and look at the 41 people watching, by the way, hit the like button, please. How many of you would I see on your LinkedIn profiles if I were to look you up and try to match up what it is that you do with your names? How many of it would I see that your names match up to what it is that you do? And this is, again, where the problem lies. So today, we had a really big meeting surrounding nuclear remediation, because when he started talking to companies about it, when he started reaching out to people, they looked up his name first, and they looked up the company, and they saw that his profile says he's head of strategic partnerships with a focus on nuclear environmental remediation and decommissioning. How many people could do this? Everyone. How many people do it? No one. Again, very easy way to get ahead of your competition. So let's go back to my list, right? All right, strengthen relationships and networking for certification, schedules, past performance, adopt AI quicker than the rest of the people, leverage technology and innovation. It doesn't feel like social media is innovation, but it is, because people are still not doing it. And then the last thing, expand service offerings to meet government needs. Another area where I see that a lot of small businesses fall is that they come to me and they say, Eric, I'm a mobile notary service. Does the government buy mobile notary? The government does not buy mobile notary. So what should I do, Eric? Well, you can't sell to the government because they don't buy mobile notary services. So a lot of times we are focused in on what it is that we want to do and not what it is the customer needs. right? We know that we have the ability, that we're resilient, right? Because that's what small businesses are. We're flexible. We're supposed to be able to move faster than large businesses, but we're not leveraging any of that to our advantage. Instead, we are acting as though um, we are the stodgy large companies, that we're inflexible and that we can't pivot into an area where we have some sort of advantage. So again, when we look at a lot of times um, what it is that the government's wanting and needing, well, my experiences with a lot of small businesses is they're saying, Eric, well, I don't do it that way, or I don't sell it that way. And I go, but that's the way they buy it. So you don't really have a choice but to do it that way, because that's the way the government buys it. So I want us to consider, right, um, how do we shape our business models to solve the customer's problems, the government's problems, right, and be able to help them, because ultimately they're the ones paying our bills. So for me, what I do is, and again, I don't encourage people to chase everything within the realm of a specific marketplace, right? How is it that the government is buying, for example? Yes, this will be reposted on YouTube. Don't worry, I will not be taking this down. This will be on YouTube for people to watch and go. So how do we expand our offerings to meet the government's needs, right? What does that look like? Who are we in terms of how do we describe ourselves to the customer? So oftentimes, right? And let me go in and I'll show you guys something. Pull this up here, right? And this is another thing that people ask me all the time. Eric, what should I sell to the government? Eric, what should I sell to the government? Right? Again, we have a lot of data. We have a lot of charts. People are asking me, where should I focus on? Um, I showed this chart yesterday. I'll show it again today. This is, again, looking at the data from what the government's putting out there. These are the offices, right, that are putting out lots of sources sought. Here are the names of the offices, right? Uh, Here are the NAICS codes that they're using, right? So again, 336-413, 334-516, 236-220. These are the NAICS codes that they're using. These are the offices that are pursuing this stuff, right? So again, all this data, right, is at your fingertips, and we're not using any of it. You want me to tell you the right industry to focus on, the right market to choose. I say that look at the data, right? Again, the biggest thing that I think that I see that happens is we are so indecisive that we don't choose an industry, we don't choose a market, and so we're all over the place, and then that's how we get flustered. So for me, I find a couple things that we do wrong. One is we're inflexible, and two is we try to cast too wide of a net, and so we end up catching nothing. So for me, um, again, look at this data, pick a space, and then start to attack that space, right? If we chose 336-413, right? Let's say I made that decision. I choose that space. Now, going back to everything I did earlier, now you can look at all of the opportunities in that area. Now you look at all the people in that area that are the winners of the contracts. You look at the places where there's not enough winners. You can look at the places where there's only one bidder. You can look at, right, the industry associations that you could be a part of. You can now start to partner with people within that industry association to find out how you can gain past performance. You can start partnering with people that are in the association that are not doing federal contracts. But it all starts once you make a decision and pick an area and go. That's where I would imagine that the bulk of everybody on this call is they're struggling is because they haven't made a decision, right? And if they made a decision, it's not something that the government needs or not something where the industry is putting a focus on. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you were the kind of guy that says that you do still the pipes, like you do the fencing. And so maybe in the last administration, you're working on the wall contract. Well, when they change administrations, the wall is no longer a priority. So if you don't pivot from the wall, then you're out. Now, under this current administration, where did this administration put all their money at? Department of Energy. So that's where a lot of the money went to in this current administration under the Department of Energy. So it would behoove any of us to look at, and we talked about some of these earlier this year, some opportunities with the Department of Energy. But either way, all of these things you can learn and solve for, right? Doing one of four things: strengthening your relationships in your network, adopting AI quicker than the rest, leveraging technology and innovation, and then expanding your service offerings to meet the government needs. So those are the things that I want to cover today. Those are the things that I wanted to go over because those are the areas where I see a lot of people are basically falling short. And I know because I've looked at a lot of people's profiles, and I promise you, if I look at any one of you guys' profiles on here, it probably doesn't match up to what you say you do. In fact, I would challenge anyone, right, to be able to show me that their profile on LinkedIn matches up to what they say they do on here on YouTube. I'm telling you, it doesn't. And that's what standing in your way of being able to penetrate the marketplace. Someone said, can you sell support services and supplies at the same time? Right? The answer is yes, you can. However, the caveat to me with that, and by the way, I'll start taking questions for people out here. So I'll finish the last 15 minutes of questions for everyone out here. So a couple things. Let me go back to the beginning and let me work on, by the way, hit the like button. Thank you. Someone says, I'm working on construction contract bid. I have no experience, but my sub has many years. How do I get it around the past experience section? Easy, right? Most, unless the bid specifically states that you cannot use your subcontractor's past performance, then I would use their past performance. Even if it does not state specifically in RFP, I would still use their past performance. The only way I would not use it if it explicitly stated that I cannot use it. So if it leaves me a room for interpretation, then yes, I would use my subcontractor's past performance. How do you discuss surety bonds for projects, and if a subcontractor will need one as well as a prime? So typically, subcontractors do not require surety bonds. It's only the prime contractor that needs surety bonds. And we do have a video on that. Should I get insurance for my business as a prime, even though my subcontractor is doing the work as insurance? So this is a tricky question. Every business does need insurance to have. However, if you're on a federal contract and this is a one-off project, you do not have to get insurance. If this is the key, right? I've done this a couple of times. I asked the contracting officer if I can use my subcontractor's insurance because they're going to be ones performing the work. Twice it's been successful that they've allowed me to do that. So to answer your question, if the government official allows you to do that, since the subcontractor is going to be performing the work on site, then the answer is yes. So, Victoria, typically loan products are for people who have contracts and people who've done some experiences. But there are some companies out here that if you were awarded a contract, they could issue you a loan to support that contract. But no, most of the time when people are trying to get money and you've never done anything, right, that's typically venture capital, not loans. So I would say that the products that you're talking about, there are other financial products out there, but the SBA typically wants some surety because it is a government-backed program. So anything government-related or government-backed, they're going to want some sort of security, whether that's put up your house as collateral or 401k or something like that. They're going to want some type of collateral-backed asset to be able to get you the loan. But there's a lot of other funding sources out there that you can do. All right. When you're pursuing a consulting path, how much of a factor is finding a client that isn't landlocked with their services product. I'm trying to understand the question, Jose. I don't understand the question. I will say this: if you're doing the consulting path, right? Uh, for me, I would focus on the client being a strong client, not whether or not they did a service or a product. I really don't care. I want the client to be a strong client that has a market that has it provides a service that the government market wants. That's my focus. Yeah, you definitely need your own insurance as a prime at some point. So, and insurance is very inexpensive to get. So I wouldn't not get it. Owen says, I use ChatGPT to streamline analysis of proposals. My thing is, I want to hire someone to do that so I can work on business rather than in it. What should be my first hire and how do I train? So for me, Owen, whenever I work with companies, I always have to make sure that they have a person like administrative assistant type of person. So that's always my recommendation for small businesses is get you someone that's an administrative assistant that can help you take some of that initial paperwork burden off. I think a lot of times, to your point, right, we get caught up in doing a lot of these things. And I mean, you can really find a lot of administrative assistants. Even look, you can find a lot of them in like the Philippines and Colombia and places like that. Like, again, those countries have really people that specialize in doing administrative tasks. And so, again, what I would do is I would train them on like, you know, I mean, if it were me, I would look for someone who had experience as administrative assistant. Just again, looking at paperwork, responding to paperwork, submitting, filling out paperwork. That would be my first. I think the bigger thing that you have to think about is not necessarily training them, is how to properly hire them. So my biggest lesson learned with hiring international people, especially foreign labor, is no one teaches us how to hire VAs well. So we've gone through an exclusive process of hiring VAs. I would say let me tell you some tips about hiring VAs. So one thing is make sure you have a very thorough job description. Make sure you test them even in when you put the job out for the job description up. One of the things I like to do is reply to me with your cover letter, and in the title of your reply, put 3 hearts or put Miami, Florida in their comment. So that way, people who are not just sending you automatic responses, and you can kind of filter through. That's like one step. The other thing that I like to do is rather than try to set up all these individual interviews, I will go and create myself a Zoom meeting. And so we'll take a Zoom, we'll open it up for 4 hours, and then we'll invite all of our VA applicants to say, hey, we're interviewing for this position between the hours of 12 noon to 4 p.m. If anybody wants to come on and interview for this job, you can hop on the Zoom at any time. And so we'll open up a 4-hour window and just let these different people come on, because trying to coordinate meetings with people overseas is really difficult. And so we'll just do that. Then the other thing that we've done successfully is that we also took and we hired multiple VAs at the same time, and we gave them small projects to test them out to see how they did. So those are 3 tips that I have for you in hiring VAs that I think will help you. Now, when it comes to the training piece, I would put them through a training program. Like, again, have them go through some of the webinars, have them go through some of my videos, right? Like, if you want them to look about proposals, find some of the content that I already have out, Owen, and have them watch that content. Again, you could even have them go through any one of our courses, right? So that's how I would train them. I would use some of the tools that other people have created, like myself and whoever else that you believe in their content, and have them go through some of that stuff as part of your training resources. So I would not have you go out and create any training. Just use stuff that people like myself and others have put out there and let them do that. Long, extensive answer, but I think it was thorough and it was warranted. Yep, I didn't understand that one. Angel, no, I'm not Dominican. Spent a lot of time in Dominican, but I'm not Dominican. And my actually my first and only wife, ex-wife, is Dominican. from the North Coast, Puerto Plata. So, and I have a niece that's also Dominican as well. So, got a lot of I have family there. What site are we on for this data? So again, the three sites that I primarily use, just for everybody out here, is sam.gov, USA Spending, and fpds.gov. Those are the three main sites that I use. All right. Could you sell supplies and services at the same time? So Jordan, you could do whatever you like. The problem is that the government is so big that it's hard for you to keep track of all the stuff. And it's hard for you to really become an expert at anything if you're trying to do all these things. I think what happens is for some reason we keep thinking that if we focus on something, we're missing out. We have like FOMO all the time. And the truth is, when you look at, like, for example, DLA, right? DLA, from my understanding, has 3,000 to 5,000 opportunities released every single day, daily. So if you say, okay, I'm going to sell DLA 3,000 5,000, and then you start looking at services. Well, I just showed you, right, through this particular chart. I'll pull up again. If we were to take this chart here, and I have it in ChatGPT. Let me go through back to chat, right? Okay, so let's take this chart and say, tell me how many of these are service related. Okay, put that in chat, right? So again, by the way, this is 1 week worth of sources sought notices, 1 week's worth. It's analyzing the spreadsheet. Okay, good. So, okay, so it doesn't have classifying the services. So we have to tell chat some specific information. So I obviously I didn't do a good job. It says they're not classified under the service related NAICS code. Okay, how many are product related? Let me see if chat can figure that out. So the point being is that if you look at all the opportunities, so again, I have to give it more data. But if you look at out of 600 opportunities that came out this week, let's say half for service, half for product. Then you got 3,000 products on DLA. How will you be able to analyze all of that information? How will you be able to tell me, okay, let's go to my chart over here. I got a better way. Let's go to my chart. So if you look at here and you choose between, like, 236 is a service code, 54 is a product code, 54 product code. If you have to choose between all this, how are you going to be able to masterfully understand the dynamics of the marketplace, the offices? How are you going to be able to do that? Right? It's just impossible to do. So anyone that is focused specifically on product or focused specifically on service, but within service, a double niche, they're going to beat you out because they're going to know what's the right pricing. They're going to know where the products are that nobody's bidding. They're going to know that information, and you can't possibly have all that information. So, do I do one-on-one calls? How do I join the community? So again, we do. I have done one-on-one calls for people. Join our community. On here, you'll see Federal Help Center below my name. That's where our community is at. So if you're here, I'll pull it up. So if you go to federalhelpcenter.com, right, it's free to join. We have a lot of trainings on there. That is the first place I tell people to go to. And then every other month, we open up new cohorts for our training programs. You can join any of our, again, we have different levels, but once you get in Federal Help Center, all that information is available, and we'll make sure we'll send you emails and keep you up on any of the different types of trainings that we offer. All right, I'm registered and ready to go. Well, one piece of advice you can offer a solopreneur entering government contracting. Great question, Angel. So everyone here is a solopreneur into government contracting. Typically, right, you don't have everything that you need. And so what you have to figure out, Angel, is pick a market. I don't really care what market. Any market. Like I showed you earlier, guys, my son chose nuclear remediation, right? I don't care what your market is, right? Nuclear remediation, pick a marketplace, right? And then commit to being the expert in that particular market, right? Uh, if you do that, Angel, if you pick a market, I don't even care what it is. If you say asbestos abatement, right? And you change your profile to say asbestos abatement, uh, then you start to do all of your market research on asbestos abatement. You start to attend events. That's where they're giving out asbestos abatement contracts. You start to reach out to people in the asbestos abatement arena. You start to become all of your contract that you post online starts to talk about asbestos abatement. Um, if you start attending, again, conferences, shows, networking events related to that area, then you'll be able to see with like a fine lens, right, exactly where the gaps are in the marketplace. And then you'll see, okay, this is where you can fit into the place. This is where you fit in. Like this is, you'll find where you fit. The problem is, Angel, most of us don't want to get to that in-depth level because we feel like we're missing out on construction. We're missing out on IT. And so guess what? We're like, okay, well, yes, I'm a specialist abatement, but I'm going to go chase this IT bid. Yes, I'm a specialist abatement, but I'm going to go chase this construction bid. And so we ended up getting nothing, right? The same tale about the dog with the bone in his mouth goes to the lake, and then he looks in the water and sees the reflection of himself. He drops that bone and try to get the one in the water, and he gets nothing. That's us. We're the dog with the bone in our mouth going to the water and seeing reflection, trying to get everything and we get nothing. Can you speak to nonprofits and government contracts? Yeah, I mean, same thing. Nonprofits have access to the same rights as for profits and contracts. There's really nothing to speak to. They there's, I mean, I don't know. I would say this: nonprofits probably have access to slightly more grants opportunities. So if I were a nonprofit, I would focus more probably on grants than I would on contracts. But I don't really see the advantage on the contract side of being a nonprofit because typically the whole point of government contracts is for-profit organizations. So I don't really see the point of that. By the way, just for context, the government awards just as many grants as they do contracts. Now, they're not the grants that some of you are thinking about where you get free money. The grants are still in the form of a contract. We have to do work and deliver services, but they order just as much in terms of dollar spend for grants as they do contracts. But they're not grants that you just get $10,000 and you get to buy a new laptop. These are grants where you have to go do some sort of a survey of why the Venezuelan government and maybe women being battered or abused and against the because of the what's happening in Venezuela, and so maybe there's a lot of homeless women out here, and so you got to go do a survey to take a poll of what their needs are and assess it. So it's still work related to those grants, but they call them grants because maybe they're addressing a social need as opposed to contracts where it's addressing like maybe an industrial based type of need. So that's how they separate it, but you still have to do work and perform the same as if it were a contract. All right. And with that, I'm going to shut it down, guys. I do want to keep it around an hour. Uh, you know, so a consultant is not the same as a middleman. A middleman typically tries to get the contract and then give it to somebody else. Consultant goes and finds a strong partner, puts them out front, and then they get a piece of it, but they're not liable for the work. Whereas a middleman is still liable for the work, and so they can get caught in the middle. And essentially, a middleman could get caught holding the bag if the person they hire don't do the work. A consultant is least risky because you're actually outside of the equation, and so you basically put somebody else up there. They're responsible for doing it, and then you get a piece of that action. Whereas a middleman, you're up top, right, and you're middlemaning the contract because the government has the contract. Government, then you in the middle, then you give it to somebody else. Well, if this person out here don't do their job, you are the ones that has the problem. So again, as always, hey, thanks you guys. I appreciate it. And black construction is definitely too broad of a niche. Because in construction, you got painting, you got roofing, you got drywall, you got remediation. So like construction is way too broad. Again, I did steel buildings, right? So even within construction, you got to find something even more particular, like in construction. Maybe you want to choose. There's vertical construction, there's horizontal construction, there's renovation. Construction is still too broad of a niche. I would dig a little bit deeper than construction. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you as always. Have a good night.